That's it. We are live today. Today is Wednesday, the 4th of July, 2018. And we have on the panel, obviously, Astral, Patricia, and Angel. Nice to see you, Angel. Haven't seen you for a while because you've moved. What it is I've got something up on the screen. I got sent this today, and I didn't know that Josh Walker, has been
Not
really
sharing.
ill. Pardon?
I can only see your icon. You're not sharing your screen.
Yeah, I can't see anything either.
Can't you? Oh, okay. Hang on. Let me stop and start again. Oh, I will start again.
Just share.
Yeah, but I should have the. Let's let me get this up, and then it might be because I put it down. Can you see it now?
Yep.
Yeah. That is the page for a fund for Josh, who I didn't know till today. Really, has been really ill in hospital, and yeah, I think he was seriously ill. So this page has been set up as a fund for him to raise money, and there's a figure on that. I think it says the goal is $5,000. As the night goes on, I'll just put the odd link out in the chat room. And very sorry for Josh, and really hope that he gets better extremely soon. Love from Sun and Moon Group, and I'm sure everybody in the chat room that he makes a speedy recovery. Anybody else want to say anything about this, Astral?
Yeah, I just hope he gets better soon, you know. I was surprised to hear about that, you know. No one wants to be ill, do they, or anything. So, yeah, I hope he gets better soon.
He's been ill for quite a while, actually. Astral?
No,
Astral.
I say I was in shock that I just read that, you know. I didn't know it. I just saw this. He was at the Salton Sea, and then he got ill, like, you know, or whatever. You know.
Was that the laser experiment?
Must have been, yeah.
We saw him with Flat Earth Dude when we went to California. He was filming it, and we were streaming it, and he was there then. I'm not sure if he looked that well then, to be honest. But hey, you know, when you look back. But anyway, that's just again, as the night goes on, I will put out the link so that people can go there and donate if they want. And as I said, all of us hope a speedy recovery for Josh. Okay, I'm going to stop screen sharing now because it's over to Angel. Angel, where have you been? Tell us.
Well, I did a marathon drive, 53 hours, 2,700 and change miles, which I was quite amazed that I was able to do it with, I think it was only about 5 or 6 hours sleep. And then I've been setting up and unpacking and sorting through stuff for the past month. So,
what's it like living in a completely different part of America then?
Well, where I am, it's hot and muggy, and it's very well, I'd say laid back. I'm used to, like, I was thinking about, I actually want to go out and get a nice bowler hat, like a bowler hat. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, I can just run over to Muskrat's or something like that, like a thrift shop. I can't find one here. I figured the other day I'd go out to find a nice coffee shop that has poetry readings or open mic or, you know, open guitars or something like that. Can't find one around here. It's like everything I'm used to, I can't find. I have to, like, reinvent the wheel in some cases.
I've got an idea, Angel. You could start your own.
Start my own?
You could start your own little poetry reading club and cafe or whatever. Couldn't you?
Well, see, I've got my own pool table,
inspiration,
and I got my own bar over there. So I might actually do that and have like a private coffee shop. So that is on the table. Just I'm not ready for it just yet. but you know, I kind of wanted, because I don't want to be like an every night type of place, but it's nice to have
Oh,
a place.
yes. Sorry,
to.
Angel, I want to stop you. Lots of people, it's the 4th of July for America today.
Yes, it is. It's the day, hypothetically, we declared independence from those nasty buggers on the other side of the pond. Oh,
what, from us, you mean?
Those nasty buggers. I like that. That's funny. Nasty beggars.
well,
Nasty beggars.
actually, as you guys were pointing out in your conference the other day, the more to the point, the court system and the legalese of those buggers over there. And I also wanted to point out, a sovereign citizen, it is an oxymoron. The only sovereign citizens are technically your law enforcement. Sovereign is everyone, and citizens are those that are subjects to the law. So technically, everyone who is a officer of the court and or a law enforcement officer, those are the sovereign citizens. The normal people or persons, those are the sovereigns. And it is a difference between a people and a person. Person is your corporation. A people is the humankind, or as I pointed out, the mankind. And soon we'll find out that human is more of the clones and the soon to be automated tellers and things like that. Those will be human, because they'll all be taxpayers and things like that, the way they're playing with the legalese and the way of the law and the way things are being written. And if Crow has only been doing this for like a month or so, then I'm quite astonished at how quickly he took on to it, because I've been following that stuff for 2 years, and it is like learning a really detailed game, because it is a game. You're playing the game of court. You're playing on their court, and you're playing by their rules, and it is how you say yes and no. And like, do you take your finger off of that chess piece? Oop, I took my finger off, now I can't move it. You know, it is how you game, set, serve, where you hit the ball. Up, you were outside the line. It is a big word game mess, and one that we shouldn't really have to play. And something, if he listens to this, he might consider looking into, is there's a group of people that you file briefs and stuff before you even go to court. So once you get there, you've already established your jurisdiction before you even set foot in the courtroom. And if the judge does their proper job and reads the briefs, then you've already won the game before the gavel's even struck, because you say, this is the situation, I am not jurisdiction to this, you know, blah, blah, blah. And you get there and like, game, set, match, done. But it is something I don't practice, because I do my best to stay out of court. You know, some games I don't like to play. You're all muted.
Sorry, yeah, I can get you. Just, you know, when you start to, I can't get the mute button off, you know.
We couldn't get a word in edgeways there, Angel.
No,
you're fine, brother. I'm joking.
Astro, leave him alone. He's all right.
I'm joking. You know, if that's a really good icebreaker, actually. If there's someone and they're very, very quiet, a good icebreaker, I find, is usually to say to them, would you be quiet, please? I cannot get a word in edgeways.
Right.
And usually they'll smile and laugh, you know, and then away you go. You're off.
You know, or if you don't shut up, I'm just going to leave. You know. But,
anyway, we're going to talk about something in a minute. But one of the last times we saw you actually online, and you were throwing away all your NASA stuff that you came across when you were moving.
I've found a whole bunch more of it. I've got right here, I've got pins from back in the when we launched the Hubble. I've got keychains. I was way into NASA. I mean, I found some. These are some of my pins that I dug out. I've got so much stuff. So It's there's other things like the UN. I used to love the UN. I used to go on visits to New York and visit them. I thought they were really good. Hands Across America was another scam I got invested in. I mean, all these things I did when I was young and stupid and was in public school and trusted my teachers before I started questioning authority.
Well, you can laugh at them now.
I can. I look back at it and I'm like, oh my goodness, it's when they only give you the data that they want you to know, you fall into it, but they don't give you the rest of the story, as Paul Harvey would say. There's, ironically enough, a couple of, I like to go down as many rabbit holes as I can just to get a feel for things. And there's a couple of YouTubes that I found in podcasts that people go deep into conspiracy theories, when really what they're doing is they I believe, either have their mental agenda of what they believe and then paint a picture around it, or they just don't, they ignore the facts that they don't want to believe, like aerial spraying, aka chemtrails. You know, our government, my government, and I'm sure yours as well, do spray things into the atmosphere. There are patents for it. Bill Gates owns a company that does it. They talk about how they did it during the Vietnam War with Operation Popeye. They did it during the Olympics they had over there in the UK 3-4 years ago, whenever the Olympics were over there, to make sure that the weather was nice. I mean, they promote it when they want to say that, oh, we're doing it for this reason. And then they turn around and say, oh, we don't do that. But you just said you did it.
Sorry, Angel. We've seen old black and white films, and these films were showing you how they did it, you know, back in the 50s, you know, when TV first became, whether it's propaganda and it's all bollocks, who knows, but they were doing it back then. They were showing you how they were doing it, and the technology, it's the same. You know, they're spraying aluminium, barium, you know, strontium, these things that are not very good for us, you know, up into the atmosphere.
It is. They also they're also now using fine lead particulates, but then when you point it out in a negative light, they say, oh, we're not doing that. One of the people I'd say interface with every now and then on Facebook put up like, oh, can you believe, like our Trump thing? They just, on Time Magazine, put out a picture of a little girl that they say was separated from their parents. Well, number one, that picture was taken during the Obama reign. Number two, it was our Border Patrol that got the child that the mother had paid coyotes to bring into the States, and then reunited them back with the family, because the father and the rest of the family didn't really want that child to come up to the U.S. The mother did, and only the mother. So the story kind of backfired on them. But when they put that meme on their website, I was like, you do realize that A, it was during the Obama reign, not during the Trump reign, and B, it was our Border Patrol that actually reunited them with their family, not separated them. The family separated. And then I'm like, you have to be careful what you actually believe in our newspapers. I mean, I can show you plenty of reports when they said, not only do we not have stealth aircraft, but the technology doesn't even exist. It could never exist. It's unimaginable. But yet today, we're talking 3-4 decades later, it's common knowledge that we have it. In fact, they brag about it. Back then, they said how it could never happen. Our scientists have been working on it for years, and you know, it's just not going to happen. Just like what they say, flying saucers, not using air pressures and stuff, using lift or negative gravity, whichever way you want to look at it, where they use a magnetic field to lift the craft off the ground. They say, oh, never happened, can't do it. Well, what about the Nazi bell? Oh, ignore that. Yeah, it was never proven. Okay, well, here's blueprints on it. Here's scientists that have done it. You can do it with a cup of coffee and nail, some wire, and some fine medical particulates in your own living room. Oh yeah, but that's on a small scale. Well, you can scale it up. Oh, you can throw all the reasons why you say it won't work. Experimentation says it will work. Just like you can throw all sorts of reasons why I can't see Chicago over the Great Lakes. I can show you pictures that you can. I mean, it's you have to be careful what you believe, and I try to focus on facts and not stories. But which brings me to my favorite toy, which is the pyramid complex.
It's not. It's pyramids. But anyway, tonight you're talking about Nazca lines.
Well, they go hand in hand because the Nazca lines, not all of them. There are little pictures of monkeys and spiders and birds and other things. Ignore the power.
He's got a thunderstorm.
Yeah, I do. The Nazca lines, when you look at the lines themselves, the ones that they like to call runways, they are actually blueprints. And anyone can do this using Bing or Google Maps or whatever, and pay attention and follow them and sketch them out. They draw the Giza complex, not just the Giza Pyramid, the Great Pyramid, but the entire complex, which kind of poo-poos the idea that one was built and then the other one was built and then the other one was built and then somebody else built the other one. They were all built simultaneously as one system. And I'm working on trying to find the locations within the blueprints for the areas that we damaged upon entry, aka the entrance itself, the area above the well shaft, and the antechamber that we broke through in order to get to the king's chamber. Also within the lines, it documents the thieves' tunnel, which was hypothetically dug out by thieves following a shaft, but yet it's in the blueprints, which tells me it was there in the structure's creation. All these little things that completely go against the tomb theory and the tomb stories. It's quite awesome. But my ultimate goal is to pump all these into 3D CAD software or Blender or something like that, and initially run them with a virtual machine, and then eventually, with the budget being when I have it, to build a physical model and then scale it up to I can actually make it work organically. Otherwise, I can nudge it a little bit with some help, because the structure does require size in order to function. I could go on to why I believe it, but it will require size, and all electricity is the difference between voltage A and voltage B, and then the movement of electrons from voltage A to voltage B. The bigger the deviation, the more electricity you have. So, and that's where size comes into play, because if you have size, you can separate the two voltages to two separate areas, and the larger the separation, not just physical space, but voltage potential, is
as the old saying goes, Angel, stand back. I don't know how big this thing's gonna grow.
Hey, Angel, can I ask you something? In that complex, then, if it's a whole complex there, are there any other pyramids in it?
I do not believe there's a fourth pyramid. I have not found any evidence of that fourth pyramid. That could have been a drawing, not a photograph. It could have been a concept thing. However, if that pyramid did and does exist, it would actually be at a slightly higher elevation than the third pyramid, which would have put it out of the water, and hence could have even been more of the ground end or neutral. But within the blueprints on the Nazca lines, which actually go far north past Nazca into areas. I mean, when they were building it, they didn't care about countries. They took the whole desert as a template, as a blank canvas. They are quite huge. Unfortunately, we've built cities and roads, and there's tree cover and things like that. That does make it difficult to find. And which would be really nice is if I could get like much of it, and then we could actually get some physical explorers to go and look under the tree lines and stuff and try to get the rest of it to actually get the fine points, because, well, I want to build it to spec, not build it to speculation.
So what's this more research that you've been doing then?
Well, I have been kind of sitting there. A couple of things about the Nazca lines is I don't know how much you've delved into them, but there are different widths of the runway lines, and each width you can look at as a different color in like pen if it was markers, because you can have like a blueprint on top of a blueprint on top of a blueprint, like layers, if you're using different widths of the lines or different colored pens. And by paying attention to one width, you have one drawing, pay attention to another width, you have another drawing. So they did and do layer things, and it's really paying attention to that. And
can I ask you a question?
Go for it.
This is not for myself. This is for like people that have never heard about this. You know what you're talking about. The Nazca lines are the blueprints of the pyramids. I would like to know: are they the pyramids in Egypt, or are you talking about these are the pyramids
not all
in
over the
China?
Planet. It's just the Nazca, the Giza Plateau.
Okay,
and
can you
to make it easy
just
for anyone?
Yeah, we're going to say for a layman, like, you know, could you like explain it a little bit, you know, simple, like,
Sure.
so that people understand?
Anybody who wants to. I don't have the ability right now because I'm on a cell phone, not on a computer, because I was worried about the power outages. But anyone, in fact, you could even do it and do a screen share. If you go to blueprint.giza.ws, there's a video that was done up by a gentleman named JD, who had discovered these 50 years ago. And it wasn't up until like the past half decade that he was actually able to really go gung-ho on it, because we didn't have Google Maps and stuff like that 50 years ago. And he discovered it just by looking at aerial photographs of like the spiders and the monkeys and stuff, and following what we called the runway lines, and saying, you know, let's just trace these runway lines out. And when he started tracing them out, he noticed it was making an eerie shape, and that eerie shape happened to be the Great Giza Pyramid. And then by following it further and further, it actually branches out. It does start with the Giza Pyramid, but as well, if you pull up that video and do a screen share, it branches out and it shows the other three structures, and then breaks down each of the sections of the three structures. It's quite amazing. And if you follow it and look at it, it's quite irrefutable. I mean, you can't look at it and not see that it is the blueprints for the structures located over in Giza. And the other thing is, it's in Nazca, South America. Well, Giza is in Egypt, Cairo, you know, north of Africa. There's no way that Egyptians had anything to do with, unless somebody wants to put some new Egyptian theory thing that like King whatever or Pharaoh whatever his name was, Khafre, decided to like, hey, send some people over in Egypt or over there to South America, which we technically don't know about yet, using boats that we technically don't have yet, and put a huge blueprint of the structure that we're going to build, and make mistakes while we're building it and make changes while we're building it, but we're going to put all the blueprints over there anyway.
Yeah, but time-wise, what timeline are we looking at?
Oh, you could do it right now?
No, I'm talking about like these Nazca lines. When were they supposedly, you know, created? Do we know a timeline?
That would be a great question for Brian, however you want to pronounce his first name, Mr. Forrester, because that's more his ballpark. I'm just looking at them. I'm not really trying to speculate when. For all I know, this could all have been done 1,000 years ago, and our history is a complete lie. I don't have a way to disprove that one way or the other. I do believe, as Mr. Forster points out several times, actually, I don't think it's him who points it out. I think it's the other guy, the older one, the one whose father climbed the pyramid and has the watch, where he says that we are a civilization with amnesia. I believe it's a manufactured amnesia because our government doesn't like to tell us the truth, keep us dumb and stupid, don't tell us our real history. But I can't prove that one way or the other. I know that carbon dating has been shown not to be accurate. They have a couple of other things that they can actually focus on now as opposed to carbon, even though people like to go back to the carbon dating thing. That's like focusing on fingerprints, which are not quite as accurate as people like to say also. But we could speculate. If I had to speculate, I'd say between 10 and 50,000 years ago. I believe that this Earth has had several life extinction events. It could have been huge earthquakes, could have been huge volcanoes, could have been huge floods, could have been huge ice ages. One more time.
Electrical arkings?
Could be. I'm not so much on the collisions with other planets, because that would backwards into the planet. But I do know, just within my own life, I've seen Mount St. Helens blow up. I've actually had the luxury of visiting Mount St. Helens. And we had that one that blew up in Greenland or Iceland or whatever's north of you guys, that took out air travel for like 9 days up there. Mount St. Helens took out travel for like a week.
Yeah, there was one in Iceland, and your geography is shit, Angel. You need to touch up on that, brother. I'm telling you.
Well, I threw out my globe.
Hey, Angel,
Uh-huh.
right now, could you just the chat which goes with this hangout we're talking on, could you just put your YouTube channel in there? I've put all your other details, but it doesn't have your YouTube channel.
Well, if somebody could type it in, because again, I'm on a cell phone today. My YouTube channel can be easily accessed by youtube.giza.ws, or by going to YouTube and just searching with no spaces, Great Giza Pyramid.
Which one do you want me to put in?
Either or both. One is a URL and the other one is off YouTube.
Say it again.
My YouTube name is Great Giza Pyramid, no spaces, all one. Great Giza Pyramid, blurbed together.
That's it.
That's it. And you can usually find me off of any search engine just by typing reverse Giza, and my videos pop up. And just look for my ugly
Lady Onyx.
Look for my ugly mug, and you'll know I got the right one.
Sorry, Lady Onyx in the chat room is asking. Anyway,
no problem.
Back to these Nazca lines then, and what you've been doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, basically all it is staring at them and following the lines and seeing where they terminate, trying to look through the trees and guess where they go to, paying attention to the different widths of the lines, and basically sketching them out. I hope to eventually then find a way to print them out on a big sheet of paper or something of that nature, or maybe directly import them into a CAD software, and then from there use them to actually construct the physical model.
Hey, Angel, I don't mean to cut you off, just the chat room. CrowXE, who's been on our channel on the panel, he says, "Hi, Giza, I'm from Cairo."
Excellent. If you ever visit the pyramids and are willing to sneak in a camera, I've got some areas I'd like you to take pictures of.
I'll say hello, CrowXE. I've been to Cairo. It was good. Tell her how.
I know now. Other than if you sneak some people a bunch of greenbacks, they don't like to let you bring cameras in officially. Of course, like you're saying, Mr. Forrester gets to sneak them in because he brings a group of 20 people in and he's like, hey, you know, let me do it because I'm going to take pictures for more promotional tours, which are great. But I want to document without a reasonable doubt because a lot of people don't believe me. And I show them, and I'm able to pull up YouTube videos and show people, like, you see this section right here? Well, yeah. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. But that's not on the brochure. Of course it's not on the brochure. It has nothing to do with tombs. And all they care about is tomb, 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 tomb. You know, the areas I like are the Thieves Tunnel that's off of the antechamber, the pre-chamber between the Grand Gallery and the King's Chamber that projects into the wall like 6 to 8 feet. I want to get lots of good pictures of that as it is currently constructed, because I believe they're doing modifications. It's the area they want to explore to look for this new hidden chamber. And I think if they're able to go in there and drill it out and, you know, mess it all up, that they'll say, oh yeah, we did that as a you know, part of the plan to find this new hidden room. So you did all this construction. Yeah, we did that. Yeah. Yep, we did that. That wasn't there until we decided to do this. Although it's in the blueprints over there on the Nazca lines, right? Oh, yeah, well, they knew what we were going to do 40,000 years later. Yeah, that's the story. I want to get as clear pictures as I can of the top of the well shaft. My goal is to see where damage is done, because I do know they did break up when they came up through from the grotto up into the Grand Gallery. They did damage. Part of it's going to be nice smooth rock because they didn't do damage, and part of it's going to have broken rock from where rock was joined to it. And I want to have documentation that backs up the blueprints. In photographs, I think are much better than drawings, or I could paint you a picture of anything I want. Hey, golden capstone. Hey, thousands of, you know, pieces of nice smooth thing on the side of it, you know, rock on the side. All of that is great and wonderful, and mentally it will paint you a picture, but it doesn't exist. It's not there. And the physical photographs are better. The other thing I'm really hoping to do, technology exists, and I was told that it's already been done, but Google won't release it yet, is that we have the technology. Any kid with a 3DS has a camera that does 3D pictures. And we can put a 3D camera, 2 cameras on a drone that are about, you know, 10 inches apart, and can just fly up and down the side of the Great Giza Pyramid and get a very detailed, you know, exactly all the nooks and crannies, exactly the configuration of the exterior skin of the structure as it currently sits. I have zero belief that there was any outer shell on the outside of it. I know they've already done that with the top. There's a documentary where they talk about how they did a 3D imaging of the, what I like to call the rock garden on the top of it. I'd like to get a 3D imaging of the entire skin of the structure. Because again, I'd like to get it 3D printed or printed out on like a piece of plastic or something, like how you can get a moon, you know, the skin of the moon. I have one somewhere here like this.
Yeah, do you know something that's missing, Angel? Is your board.
Huh?
Where's your whiteboard?
Well, my whiteboard's in the other room.
Yeah.
And I know.
Yeah, carry
But
on.
I'd like to get a printout like the same way I have this one of the moon here, to get a printout like maybe, you know, a yard by a yard in size of the skin of the structure. And, you know, so I have the actual physical structure, so I don't have to always refer to pictures. It would be nice to have a physical model to feel and touch. But I know it exists. I know it can be done. Technology has it within our grasps. I don't happen to have, you know, A, I'm not in Cairo. B, I don't have a drone. C, I don't have a 3D camera or the budget, time. And I'm sure if I started flying a camera there, they'd get more upset at me than they did the Alexander guy who climbed up
Angel,
it.
I'm pretty sure that there are videos online that you can see of
Yes,
exactly that, what you're asking about.
Air Pano Air. I think it's Pano Air, PANOAIR.com. took a really nice picture of it, but they didn't do it in 3D. That, and they took before I grabbed the image off YouTube, they pulled the full-length video down, and they want you to pay for the full-length video, which I'm on a, $0 budget. If they'd like to donate it to me, that'd be great, but it ain't gonna happen just yet. And it's not 3D. I can take a picture and put a flat picture, but it doesn't really, where you can touch it and feel the structure, like close your eyes and just feel it, and get a real, hands-on texture-wise, which is one of my druthers, one of my goals, one of my bucket list things.
Hey, Angel, can you explain to the chat room, because these Giza pyramids are they're the most important thing to you, aren't they? Apart from
I'm not going to say the most. It is one of my focuses, and the reason that I've kind of dived into this particular one is they physically exist, and I want to document that they can do work. That, like, if I showed you a pinball machine, but I didn't show you the pinball, I could say you could see where the ball would here, and it would bounce off there, and it would hit here, and it would go down there, and it would loop here. You can visually see it, but not if you're told it's a drawing by Picasso. Hey, look, it's a drawing by Picasso. No, that's a pinball machine. No, it's a drawing by Picasso. Look, here's the story about how it's a drawing by Picasso. Here's how Picasso's dad wanted to do it, and then Picasso's mom made another one next to it. And they made a mistake while they were drawing it here. The flippers, they're not flippers. What they were is they were a way to kick the rock up to the top of it. No, I want to show how it could do physical work. I think it's awesome. I think the fact that they made it with no moving parts is even more awesome. It's like if you looked at a Chinese waterfall and there's no pump. The pump is an organic pump. It is done by nature. And I think that's really part of it. They were flaunting the knowledge they had about the elements around them. And it's something we didn't know about a lot of this stuff up until just this last century, which is, I can see how in the past 1,500 2,000 years, people would make all sorts of fabulous stories because A, we didn't know about certain sections of the structure. B, we didn't have the knowledge to understand how it would even work, because now I can say H2O and everyone correlates H2O with water. We know it's hydrogen and oxygen. Go to somebody in the middle of the 1500s. Go to somebody in the middle of the 1800s and say, hey, give me a glass of H2O. They'd look at, number one, we don't even know what H is yet. We didn't discover H until the 1650s. We didn't discover O until the early 1700s. So we didn't know that water was hydrogen and oxygen. We didn't know what hydrogen was. We didn't know what oxygen was. We hadn't even labeled them yet. Technically, if you believe our history books, hydrogen wasn't discovered until the middle 1600s by some guy who was doing experiments with some acids and stuff, and some gas was bubbling out of the water, and he captured it and did the experiments with it, and then he labeled it hydrogen because it was born of water. I mean, it's so I can understand how somebody in the 1200s would make up a story and people would believe it, and that story was passed on and on and on. And people don't want to not believe it because it's taught that way in school. You're taught that you're taught how to get your driver's license in school. You just had a conference on how really you shouldn't have to have one. You should be traveling. You only need a driver's license if you're doing it for commercial reasons. You only need a driver's license if you're doing it and you want to get compensation back from the government. They want to make sure that you know how to drive, so that since you're driving under their authority, you're driving for the government, you're a postman, that you don't drive the truck into somebody's tree and knock over their kid and say, well, you guys gave me the keys and told me how to do it. They want you to make sure you pass the test and you can document that you know how to operate the vehicle. This is great. But that doesn't mean that me as a sovereign technically has to have one. If I want to drive over a tree and hit somebody's kid, that makes me liable and makes me stupid for doing it. But that doesn't mean that I should have had one. Ethically, maybe, but not contractually. I mean, it's a whole big, that's a whole nother story. And I have many different things that I focus on, but the reason I focus on the Giza Pyramid is because it's in your face. I think it's so in your face that if I can create one and show that it does work all by itself, just like how people can take a wooden structure, like a dowel structure, and put a banana underneath it, underneath a open air structure of a pyramid, and by frequencies, happens to be grounding, I believe, that it will let that banana not brown for like twice as long, or put an apple under there and it will last and stay fresher for 3, 4, 5 times as long. A plant will grow more healthy. I think it has to deal with grounding, the frequencies of the earth we live on. Same way we should be walking around with bare feet instead of with plastic soled shoes, and separated from the frequencies of the earth. I believe in symmetrics.
Something.
Yeah.
That about well, they have done experiments with pyramid shaped, little greenhouses, and plants have thrived. They've really,
Yep. That's because the pyramid,
better because of
the pyramid
the shape
is a
health
good shape for an
sensors,
antenna.
Health centers
And
as well. Here in
and the
Scandinavia, they have glass roofs with pyramid shape, as the roof. Many of them.
And you don't even have to have walls. It can be an open frame. It doesn't actually have to have walls. It can just be the frame, because it's an antenna, and the frequencies it's pulling in is that of what it's resting upon. And if it's resting upon Earth, then it's pulling in the frequencies of Earth. It's basically grounding that particular thing that you put within it, which is why it's good to Earth. It's good to get out there and actually work in the garden. Not the garden on the 4th floor of your apartment complex, which is in a concrete bin, but actually gardening in the ground, way down there at ground level. And we have been separated from the world, from the earth we walk upon, and that makes us a little bit sicker, which is fine, because the doctors love it. They bring you in there. They don't tell you, hey, take your shoes off and walk outside in the grass for 10 minutes, a day. Take your dog for a walk, take your shoes off, hang out in the park, go to the beach, put your feet in the sand, actually become a little bit of one with nature. No, they say, take this pill. Take this pill. Don't worry about it. Here, I got something else for you. How about this ointment? Take this little chemical here. Yeah, they skirt around the cause and just suppress the symptom. And that is the way that we've been trained to do it since the middle of the 1700s with the whole, when they told, was it Hippocrates to go pound salt and said, hey, we can make money at this. I like to point out, 2 decades ago, if somebody said they wanted to get a, what do they call it, gender recorrection surgery, they would tell them to go see a shrink and, talk about it before they went and did this. Well, that's great, because, hey, they would go see a shrink. But then they said, hey, we can make more money by actually doing the corrective surgery than sending them to the shrink. Not only that, but then they become a customer for life, because they have to come and get their hormone injection shots forever, or until they expire, whichever comes first. And that's more money, more, they're money making. It's more money than if they took you to a shrink and talked to you and just like saying, hey, God created you the way you are.
They want to keep you still as a victim, basically. On anything you're in, they just want to keep you, as a victim.
Well, to be honest, they want to keep you as a consumer. They are into commerce. They are looking for the best way to make the most amount of money off of you as possible. It goes to victimless crimes. When a cop pulls you over, he's not pulling you over for your safety. He's pulling you over primarily because he wants to find something to give you a ticket for, even though you may have done nothing wrong.
It's a cash cow, isn't it? I think
It
of it like this.
is.
It's a cash cow, and we are the grass.
We are they need us to be a consumer. You have walked in their front door, and they need to find a way to suggestively sell you on buying something. You will buy the fact that you were speeding. You will buy the fact that you didn't come to a full stop at that stop sign. You will buy the fact that you crossed over that line while you were driving, even though there were no cars coming the other direction. It was 3 o'clock in the morning, and you were grabbing another diet soda because you needed like that caffeine to keep you awake, but you veered over the line, and because of that, you need to pay a ticket for some price. It is annoying, and it is much more prevalent today and much more obvious when you can point it out. But as Crow and the other guy you were on with yesterday were saying, it's the mindset. You have to think of it in that they are looking, and they're looking for a way to convince you that you did something that you owe them money. And you don't owe it to them. You owe it to the state. You owe it to the government. You owe it to, and you don't owe it. They want you to think you owe it. It's a game.
Yeah.
It's their court. It's their rules. And you don't have to play by their rules. But if you're trained in school being, one of the fish, herd mentality, you are trained to do as they direct you to do. And you shouldn't have to be. You should, if you want to dig a hole in your backyard and put a well in there, you shouldn't have to ask government's permission to do it. Although it's probably nowadays it's a good idea you make sure that you don't have a fracking thing up the street or, nuclear waste dump around the corner. But either way, it's it should be that you are free to do on your land what you wish to do. And that's becoming less and less. Here in the States, they're now wanting to lower that. You used to have the ability to play between the surface of the earth and 1,000 feet. So if you wanted to put up an antenna or build a barn or put a silo or do something like that, you could. Now they're even limiting that. You have to ask permission to do anything, and they're trying to bring it down to even like lower. I think they're trying to say 400 feet. This way, Amazon can fly its drones between 400 and 1,000 feet. But it's quite amazing. You're the restrictions and limitations they put on you, and it's for the betterment for everyone. Oh, you have to give up your liberties because of the herd mentality. Well, other people need that area. Well, what if I want to fly a kite? What if I want to go parasailing? What if I want to put a balloon up there with a camera so I can actually watch what the sun does and how the moon and the clouds all interact? Can't do it. It's annoying. But back to the pyramids. It's again going back to that pinball machine. If I showed you a pinball machine, but you'd never ever played pinball, didn't even know what a pinball machine was, then you wouldn't know it's a pinball machine. If you didn't know that when it hit a rubber bumper it would bounce, then I could tell you it's whatever. I could tell you it's a pretty cool design, and I could say how the bumpers relate to stars in the sky and stuff like that. And as long as I made the story somewhat believable, you would go to sleep not questioning what I told you. But then if I turn around and put a metal ball at the top and it went ding, 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 and bounced around, you'd be like, hey, that's kind of cool. I showed you how the flippers can make things push the ball up at the top again. You're like, hey, I don't believe that Picasso story anymore. And that's my goal with the pyramid, is to construct one. Everybody else, I've watched many people's ideas on what they feel the structure does. They all require modification in one way or another. I refer to that as re-engineering the pyramid, finding a structure that exists and tweaking it to make it do something that they want it to do, to re-engineer it. I don't want to re-engineer it. I want to build it to spec. I want to build it to exactly how it is and prove that it does work. It'd be nice to do the same thing with that structure in your backyard, to build a semi-small scale model of that and show that. I believe it has to do with condensation, the way that it's built and how it would be usually within a pool of water, the way you can see where there's like wells that should be filled with water, that I think it would probably be condensating clean water. And it may also, with the more and more I learn about how anytime nature does anything, there's always a transference of energy. Condensation is actually giving up energy to condensate, just like you apply energy to make it boil or separate into its respective gases. When it comes back together, it gives up energy. So in essence, that structure being so large could be a battery of sorts. Because if you have, again, two different voltages, you have the main pool of water and you have the pool of water that comes out from both sides and is separated by a barrier. If it's at a slightly different voltage, which nature would provide, if you just kept it running and kept things condensating, eventually it would be at a slightly different voltage. Enough that if you like put your toe in one side and put your toe in the other, you get a spark. You'd be like, ow, that hurt. Okay. Not enough to fry you like an electric chair, but enough to give you a nice little jolt and think about it. And like saying, nah, we don't want to do that again. You take that same thing and you could use that little tiny bit of voltage to do electroplating or potentially fill a Leyden jar. I mean, you could, what all it is it shows that if there's any electricity, there's electricity. Even the smallest amount, you can do a lot with a small amount of electricity. Don't have it with me right now, but I do. I have a cell phone right here. It's amazing how little a bit of electricity you need to run this thing and how powerful it can do it. You don't need a lot. One little solar panel, I could recharge that in a half an afternoon. That same little solar panel a decade ago, people would have looked at it and said, I have no idea what to do with it. Because here, I got one. It's right here, okay? This little thing is an LED that connects to a USB. I can plug it into here. This thing will run for like half a day, and it'll take about half a day to charge it back up using the sun. So I could run this I can charge it all day and run it all night and never have to pay for another battery again. That'll be great and wonderful. This same device right here, which still would have worked a decade ago without this LED flash bulb, it wouldn't work because a normal flash bulb would drain this in like 15-20 minutes because of the amount of energy it uses to illuminate that flash bulb. So we're becoming more and more efficient with the electricity, but it's still electricity. It may have been useless a decade ago, but that doesn't mean it wasn't electricity. We just didn't have a use for it. That's if I can demonstrate that the Giza Pyramid can make a spark. All I have to do is make one spark, just like a Lord Kelvin drop generator. Only has to make one spark, a Wimshurst generator. If it can make a spark, that documents the knowledge of electricity. Even if they made it just to make a pretty spark, they made it to make pretty sparks, and everyone would walk over and go, oh, pretty spark. That doesn't mean they were running air conditioners and they had flying machines or that they, were doing anything else. I believe that they were doing other things, but it will still document that they had the knowledge of electricity. They also had the knowledge of that water is a lot more than just water, that it's hydrogen and oxygen, then it can be separated and joined back together. Again, something we didn't know until less than 300-400 years ago, if we believe what's taught to us in our history books.
Yes, amazing. It is a shame you can't go over there, though, isn't it, Angel?
Well,
going over there really wouldn't help me too much, other than if
that's
they
what I'm
allowed me
always
to.
thinking. Like, I truly believe, Angel, that you would benefit so much by going there. Seeing the size of it. You know, that
Oh, I understand.
where it is and how it is, and you know, and just like some of these blocks are massive.
If they
Others,
don't
you know,
let me bring
not
my
so.
camera, if
Yeah,
they don't let me bring my
yeah.
camera,
Listen, I mean, there's
and
protocols, and there's like, you know, this like, come on, man. I mean, gosh, just use
I
your
would like to
noggin, you
bring my
know.
camera,
Yeah, you just
and I
stick
would like
something
to
in your
have,
pocket.
and I'd also like to have free access to the areas that, again, Bren just had a video that came out, what, November or something, where they talk
Brian
about the
Forrest, you mean?
tunnel.
I was calling Brian
Yeah,
Forrest. Yeah.
Brian. How? Well, I think it's Brian. I'll call him Brian, but I think it's spelled Bren. But you've talked to him, so if he said to call him Brian, it's Brian. He's the one who dictates how to pronounce his own name. But they now have that area that has been off limits that they call the Osiris Well Shaft.
Yeah.
Okay. There's probably, and there's more sections like that. There's a whole nother section up to the northeast side, which has a different name that they currently say is they put gates on it and say that it's a bat sanctuary. They don't allow you to go in there, but it's an entrance to what I call the aquifers. They currently call them the lost caves under Giza, but at the time I believe they would have been aquifers. But I would like to go up there with a scuba tank, because when you're in there it smells really bad from the bat guano, and map them
Bat
out. And
guano.
well, yeah, that's the name of it.
Bat shit, yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's just because I've not heard that said for quite a few years, so I'm sorry.
No, but or I'd like to get like a little a drone or something and let it fly through there and map it out. The technology exists to do it, but yet they're going to spend thousands of dollars on drilling holes and putting this little robot into an area of the structure that I feel doesn't have anything. Part of the reason I feel that they found the void is because they're assuming it's solid, and I don't think it's the whole structure is solid. They come up with a figure of 2.5 million blocks to build the structure. Well, that's assuming the structure is made out of Lego blocks, where it's block after block after block and blocks deep and blocks that. You know, by watching videos of people who come in through what they like to call the thieves' entrance, that they're walking through areas where there's boulders and fill. It's not squared blocks. So the whole structure is not built out of squared Lego blocks. The structure has a skin on the outside of it, and then they put boulders and fill on the inside of it. And the area up top is probably filled with sand or dirt or something. And because they're X-rays, or actually they weren't X-rays, they were using neutron rays. But either way, they found an area of less dense. Well, that's great. It's less dense. It's dirt or sand. It doesn't mean it's void. It doesn't mean it's an emptiness. They assume it's an emptiness because they assume it was built out of Lego blocks. Even though the areas that we've drilled into, they drilled a hole through the hallway that goes between the Grand Gallery and the Queen's Chamber, and they drilled it through and they found nothing but sand behind it for several feet. Okay, well, that right there tells you it's not built out of Lego blocks.
Hey,
I mean,
Angel, a lot of people think now that those stones were poured. They weren't.
I do as well. In fact, you want to, I suggest anyone who doesn't feel that, there's a video which can be found at GoPro 2015, like 2015, .giza.ws. Or it's on one of my playlists, where it is a gentleman whose name is Alexander, who has a GoPro. Don't watch it with kids in the room because he cusses a lot within the video. And he wears a GoPro and he climbs through the whole thing. At about 30 minutes into it, he's in the subterranean chamber, and he actually goes into the dead end shaft. One of the people he was with broke the fence off and he climbed into the dead end shaft. Now,
and don't tell me there's a stamp at the end of it and it says circle cement.
No. But
Well, you might as well.
But
Bloody hell, come on,
but
Angel. I mean, you
Astral.
no, it
need to
would.
go and sorry, you need to see them though. I
It's
mean, they're not poured.
it,
They've been
it's been
carved or
well.
something. They have.
Astral.
Don't say that until you let me finish what I'm saying here. And again, if you want to, I'd suggest go ahead, pull up, go type in the URL I said, pull up the video, go about 30 minutes in, do a screen share, and I'll point out to you where you can see that there is where they stopped one pour and started the next, and you can see it was made in sections. And knowing the technology we have today, I feel it was done in such a way that they took something like the drill that they used to make the tunnel, that nice tunnel they have between France and the UK, and they bored in there, making about a 25 foot area, and then they backfilled it with what we like to refer to as limestone, but I feel that it was actually a poured structure. You can also see at 2 points on the way, what they like to call the descending shaft, there's a spot where there's about a break of about 2 feet where they poured and then they stopped, they let it settle, and they did another pour. Now they like to say that it was done that way because to allow for earthquakes and stuff. Well, if you have a huge limestone quarry that you're drilling through, why would you need to make breaks for earthquakes? You don't. You make a break between pores. It's just, there's a story, and then you look at it and you let logic answer the question for you. The structure was poured. They've also done several things that they've done on the rocks within the upper body of the structure, where they've found air bubbles. They've found infused water, which means it was done with a slurry, just like how we do cement. And like if you pull up a brick of cement, that cement is like 80% water. There's water in that cement. It's infused with the lime, but there's still water within that brick. A natural rock made in the bowels of the earth is made under great pressure and great heat. All of the water is squished out of it. A real rock has no water in it. A manufactured rock, a composite rock, does have water within it. It also has air bubbles. So both of these things. And the third thing is the fine metal particulates. A real rock that is made within the bowels of the earth, that takes hundreds or thousands of years to cool and settle, all the fine metal particulates will orientate themselves north. That's just a fact. And they can use these things to tell which orientation that rock was facing at the time it cured. Well, the rocks within the Giza structure, when they put them into electron microscopes, they are sporadic, which is something you will find if it was mixed in a thing and it cured within a day or a week, like cement or a composite rock would. So there are 3 physical experiments they've done, along with just looking at them optically, that show you, so that's 4 things that are easily referenced, that tells you that a majority of the rocks within the structure are made, poured, composite, however you want to call it. And you also have to realize we didn't have that real knowledge on how to do that up until, again, those maybe 1,500 to 1,000 years ago. We had, mortar rocks and we had things like that, but we really didn't have what's called cement up until 800 years ago. And now we have the ability to actually do what they call composite rock, which is very difficult to tell from actual rock. So we are now coming to the technology to actually recreate the structure in such a way that we can't tell if it's real rock or fake rock. And like I said, we've done experiments on some of the rocks within the structure, and the results came back that they were fake rock. Now, they don't put these in the tour guides because it goes against the whole, we quarried it, they put it on a thing, thousands of people with ropes and
They do
seed
that with
oil.
Silver Hill here. They just say it's a mound of earth, and it could be over 4,500 years old. That's it. When actually it's a pyramid of the world, and it might be one of the oldest ones. It's such a shame, isn't it?
And if I remember correctly, when they did some digging on the surface of it, they found an interior structure that was inside of it that the dirt was on top of. So there was a form factor structure on the inside of it. Was that correct?
Yeah, there is something inside like that. Yeah.
So that all that is evidence that the story isn't correct. The story is a lie. The official story is a lie. And if the official story is a lie, you can come up with your own decisions.
But you know what's really weird? Everybody around here will still think that it's some ancient mound. That's it. You know, like just earth. They found nothing in there, sort of thing. But actually, you can go to the pyramids of the world. It's there. So what's the problem here? Why can't, if it's in the pyramid of the world, why can't we then announce that it's a pyramid? And there's also one in Marlborough College. And then someone was saying, one of the hangouts, that a lot of the colleges here have these mounds. You know, they're tiered, round pyramids, little ones. But they're in all the colleges. Big colleges, there are these mounds. So little pyramids everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Well, I don't try to intermix the words mounds and pyramids, because yes, I'll call them monolithic structures, large structures.
Yeah, they're little pyramids.
Some of them could be pyramids. Okay. They could be that too. I'm not familiar with all the stuff that's in your backyard. But I do know recently I love pissing people off by sending them copies of the pictures and videos showing of the creation of Stonehenge. when they tell me, well, Stonehenge is thousands of years old, I'm like, here's a video or a picture you need to look at. It's the lies we have been told are so numerous. It is difficult to start having a conversation with somebody when first you have to re-educate them on what is true. You have to de-indoctrinate them and properly educate them. And sometimes that's a huge hurdle. I've had conversations with people where they're like, but Pharaoh so-and-so did this and that, and he wanted this, and it points towards, the polar star. And I'm like, okay, but you realize it only points towards the polar star once every day, because if it's the south shaft they're talking about, it only does that when it comes around once a day. It doesn't constantly point toward. Yes, it'll point towards it once a day for like half a second. So that's part of the story, that like, they don't point out. Yes, it points toward half a second once a day. It's annoying that they were told things and they believe it so much.
Yeah, because everything's to cover up the truth, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say it's to cover up the truth, because I don't believe that the majority of people, even that work for the antiquities, know the truth. What they know is they have a cash cow in their backyard that people will come from all over the earth to visit, and they do not want to stop people from coming to see the pyramid. Now they could still say, hey, like the Boulder Dam we have, that's huge, that people come from all over to see. That's, or even the Aswan Dam. I would go see the Aswan Dam that's over there in well, it's not really in Cairo. It's a couple 100 miles south of it, but I would go see that because I like engineering projects. I like to see creations. And they could say, hey, it's still huge. You can still come see it, but it has nothing to do with kings and pharaohs and Egyptians. But some people will be dissuaded from that, and they really don't want to disrupt their cash cow. So they're lying to you because they have an agenda that they want you to be a consumer and come and pay money to see their big pile of rocks. They're not there because they're not lying to you because they know the truth. In fact, they probably don't know the truth.
I'm saying they just couldn't have told us the truth from the beginning. Then we wouldn't be here.
I would say because they probably didn't know they were lying. If you were a tour guide for the pile of dirt in your backyard and you were told it was a pile of dirt in your backyard, um, you would just, keep repeating that pile of dirt story, and that's what you would do. Unless you had something to actually make you stop and think that it's something else, you're not really lying to people. You're telling them a lie, but you're telling them what you feel is the truth. So you're not lying to them. Your older brother that tells you that Santa Claus is coming on December 25th and he's going to bring you toys, he's not lying to you. He is lying to you, but he doesn't know he's lying to you. He doesn't know he's lying to you until he gets into high school. And then he's lying to you. Before that, he's telling you the truth. He's telling you that the Easter Bunny will be there. He's telling you that the Tooth Fairy is going to come if you put that pillow you put that tooth under your pillow. He's not lying to you. The Tooth Fairy is going to come and give you a quarter if you put, or a pound or shilling or whatever you guys have. If you put that tooth under the pillow, you're going to get a present in the morning, and it's going to be from the Tooth Fairy.
Isn't it, Angel? You can see that. Okay, you've got people like Brian Forrester that go over there, but some of these guides now, even other people filming them, the guides are beginning to say different things now.
There comes a point where some of them have got to know bit by bit that they're lying. That I'll agree, because once you know that what you're telling people is no longer the truth and you continue to tell it, now you're lying. But initially, I don't believe that they're lying. Initially, they are saying what they might feel is the truth. Some of them, like Zawi Awas, I'm sure he really thinks that a pharaoh built that. I'm sure he really thinks, what he really thinks. I don't think he knows the truth. I don't think he's ever stopped to think about what else it could be. Now, he was hiding areas. He was not telling people full disclosure of what exists and how the Sphinx actually has a couple of tunnels and corridors in it, because I believe that was assembled as well. You can see it was assembled when you get to look inside there. There are a couple of holes that you can look in, and you can see that it was assembled. It was not one chunk of rock that they carved. It's a couple of pieces that they put together and then probably slapped some goo on the outside of it. Again, something that up until current day, we could not even have fathomed as being possible, because we didn't know what cement was until like 800 years ago. We didn't know what composite rock was until, I think, just this last century.
Well, that's what we've been told. See?
Right.
It's the same thing. That's what we've been told.
So there comes a point that they should stop lying, but it would require everyone to act. It's like stealth aircraft. I pointed this out to people the other day. I'm like, I can show you videotapes. I can show you digitized videotapes of in the 70s and even in the 60s where there are news reports and stuff, people saying, we don't have stealth aircraft. There would be no such thing as stealth aircraft. This is hocus pocus. You might as well just be looking for flying saucers. Stealth aircraft will never exist. But yet, the stealth aircraft had existed since the 1954, if I have my dates correct. So since 1954, we've had stealth aircraft. They've had the knowledge of how to make an aircraft stealth, even though they weren't pumping them out like they do nowadays, where it's like, yeah, I'll take 4 stealth aircraft and 1 stealth carrier, please. It's like, we have one.
Hey, Angel, it's like we've been to the moon.
Yes. It's like we've been to the moon. I can tell you a funny story about what happened on the way to the moon. There are lies, and I don't think they want everyone to wake up at once. Although it's hard. Jaranism is really drilling people in, which is why I'm happy. Luckily, I think it was the BBC and one of our stations here both did a report on the circle thing, Stonehenge. So I don't have to report. I don't have to send somebody a copy of a link where they'll turn around and say, well, you might as well send me a link to Alex Jones. I won't believe it anyway. You know, it's like you ignore the facts because you're shooting the messenger. And I'm happy that some of our actual TV stations are focusing and retelling the facts, because it'd be a lot easier for somebody to believe it if it's in the Star Ledger or the New York Times than if it's in the National Enquirer. You know, I could tell you the National Enquirer says there's elongated skulls, but until the New York Times says there's elongated skulls, even though I could show you an elongated skull, and Lloyd Pye has them, the lady you're going to have on, Brian Forrester has them. I mean, people physically have these things. There are x-rays of them. There are reports of them. I can even show them reports of the National Smithsonian admitting to purchasing them, having them, inspecting them. You know, until it's in the New York Times, they don't believe it. Some people will not believe it until it's really too far in their face, and that's part of the problem. Is they've been miseducated. They're indoctrinated into believing what they're already set to believe, and it's hard to get them to believe
unfortunately, a bit of a narcissist society.
Well, until you admit that you've been lied to. That's why I try to get somebody to understand they've been lied to. Until they admit they've been lied to, they're unwilling to actually believe that they've been lied to. There has to be some crack that gets them to see they've been lied to. Oh, I can't believe my husband is actually cheating on me with somebody else. He just comes home late from work every night. He always has a reason. I have to believe him. He's my husband. Well, here's a videotape of it occurring. Okay. Oh my God. Those 4 times last month that he came home late. The time in September he was late. Then he went on that vacation trip that his boss didn't even know about. Then it all clicks. But before that, it's normalcy bias. It's cognitive dissonance. That's the other word. You until you admit you've been lied to.
That's because it's so big, isn't it? It's not just one lie or by accident or something.
It's all of them.
It's everything.
That's why I say I have to de-indoctrinate, re-educate. That's why I have such a trouble working with somebody, especially on the Giza Pyramid, because they have so many. They can't believe it wasn't done. I can show you pictures and documents and stuff. I'd be happy to show you the videotape where you can look at it in your own eyes, where you can see where one pour, when you pour cement, one pour ends and the next pour begins. You can see it with your own eyes. If I told you I did a swimming pool in my backyard and I show you the picture of the mold of the swimming pool, you can say, oh, I can see here where you poured here and then you let the cement dry and then you pour it here. Yes, okay, you can see that because you understand that you can pour cement. Well, somebody 800 years ago that was climbing through the Giza Pyramid didn't understand that you could pour something that would look like limestone. I say look like because it's not limestone. It's not true organic limestone. They could use mixtures that is like limestone because they wanted something which was very low conductivity.
But that's what we're told again, isn't it? We're told that they wouldn't know.
Well, they won't.
What I'm trying to say is there's so much lying in history. It's just we're still going with what they've told us. And I mean, we're never going to probably get to the bottom of all of it, but at least like people like you, even you, looking into this. Can I just say something? A lot of people don't know, and I didn't know till you, that those 3 pyramids aren't on the same level. I just wish, could you just explain a little bit about that to them, to the chat room?
Well, you can actually look at it, easily found if you go to photos.giza.ws. Somewhere on there, I have a picture, 2 pictures at least, of the elevations of the Giza Plateau. And each of the pyramids is at a slightly, the whole plateau is at a slight angle. It's not flat. It's at an angle. It's the seventh, the one I call Building 7, the third smallest of the 3 larger pyramids, is at a higher elevation than the Great Giza Pyramid, and the other one is in the middle of them. And even the Sphinx is below that. The whole plateau is on an angle, and they may not point that out in school, but if you look at a elevational map, you can see it, that they are at a different elevation, which means that while they're at a different elevation, if you take the three structures and line them up, you have to like raise the other two up a little bit. And when you raise the other two up a little bit, you notice that all the functional parts, all the guts and glory of them, are all at the same elevation. If you put them all down at the same elevation and put them all next to each other in a booklet or something, then that doesn't click in. But when you raise the other two up, then everything is at the same elevation. All the functional parts are at the same elevation.
So that's quite amazing in itself, isn't it?
Well, you could say it's amazing. It isn't really amazing until you look at what would happen if you filled it with water. And then you realize that it's all designed to work with that water finds its level. And that's just a fact of nature. And with water finding its level, you can then use that to capture gases, because the gas can't get out because it can't press down on the water to get out. They are designed as containment vessels to trap a gas. I'm not sure that I even know exactly what that gas is yet, because this is where experimentation is going to come into play. I can assume a bit, but I don't have environmental chambers.
It sound like they're making air or oxygen or something.
I think it may just be hydrogen and or helium. And because there are ways to get helium out of water as well when you deal with electricity. And you
know that they traveled in the sky, didn't they?
Well, they did have the I'm not going to say flight like an airplane, but dirigible like a Zeppelin or a hot air balloon type flight, because otherwise the Nazca lines and many other things would be almost irrelevant. They are designed to be read from altitude. Now, I'm not talking like 30,000 feet, but at least 1,000 to 1,500 feet, which would be fine for a Zeppelin or a hot air balloon.
Yeah, because we've talked about this before anyway, haven't we?
Right. So it could just be hydrogen. It could be helium. And it could also be a gas which is a mixture or a derivative of them. Because another thing that we're not really told in high school or elementary school, a lot of people learn the periodic chart, which I do have one, but I don't have it handy right now, is that like 96 elements and then the other ones that bring it up to 106 elements and stuff like that. But again, that's a very captive, very simplistic look at it. There's another elemental chart because like hydrogen itself has 3 derivatives. Oxygen has like 6. You have oxygen 17, oxygen 14, oxygen 16, oxygen 18. There's no just one oxygen. Water itself, we're told it's got ice, water, and gas, steam, whatever. Well, in reality, there's a gel state of water that's just below freezing, between 0 and 4 degrees Celsius. There's also phased water, just like how you can have phased hydrogen and phased helium, how you have phased neon for neon signs. That's another state. I mean, that's where you throw electricity through it and you get it to separate. And then as it's rejoining and separating over and over again, that creates light. I mean, there's many different states of these elements, as well as there's many different derivatives of the elements. So
there is burn marks inside, isn't there, some of these pyramids, or one of them?
Yes, there are, which I believe is scarring from the reactions. And the scarring happens to be in the areas where I believe I know what the reactions are that are occurring. But one of the problems I have had is I have sat down with people who are way more scholarly than myself. And, you know, somebody was professed to be a physics teacher in a college. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to him and I'm like, and this and that and that. And I'm like, what would happen here? He's like, well, why won't you just do this and this and this? It would be much more convenient. I'm like, no, no, no. I'm following a already designed containment vessel. I'm very careful not to use the word pyramid. Very confined, very already defined containment vessel. And I just want to figure out what is going to happen within the elements within this containment vessel. And he's like, well, it would be easier if you did this. And I'm like, no, 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 no. I don't want to modify the containment vessel. I'm trying to figure out what's going to occur. And then as soon as I let the word pyramid slip, all of a sudden I lost the guy. He's like, oh, pyramid, my uncle went to visit them. Yeah, they're great, made by pharaohs, da, da, da. I'm like, can we get back to, oh, you know, and I lost him because now it's a tomb. It went from being a scientific classroom containment vessel to being a tomb, because that's what we've been told. And that's part of the problem is you lose people because they already have pre-notions of what the structure does based on their indoctrination, which is why one of my videos, I call it pulling your head out of the sand. I want people to not think of it as being in Egypt. Stick it in the middle of the Great Salton Sea. The same three structures in the middle of the Great Salton Sea. Just give me a big fire hose because I need a lot of water to get this thing rolling. And then let's discuss, let's have a true discussion on what the elements inside the structure will do. I'll give you a couple of variables. And then from there, I just want to know what the structures will do, what nature would have those structures do, because they did work. And this is where eventually I want to have a physical model, because then I don't even have to discuss it. I want nature to do what nature is going to do, and the result will be what nature yields. And whatever it is, it ain't going to be a tomb for a pharaoh. It's going to be, at minimum, a spark. I believe that spark now actually led to creating something, because when you look at what they like to call, currently it's called LERN, low energy nuclear reaction, LENR, what used to be called cold fission, but they had to rename it because as soon as they say cold fission, people all of a sudden say, oh, cold fission, they're like crop circles and flying saucers. Ha 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 ha. No, you can have a nuclear reaction without the massive amount of energy that we think of that you need to have a nuclear reaction. Anytime a proton or a neutron or something moves within the element, that's a nuclear reaction. And it doesn't have to have a lot of energy. You just have to bring it to the breaking point, and nature will do it by itself. But I do believe that the structure is set up in such a way that it is most appealing to some element or some derivative of an element or a compound that we may not quite yet understand, because in normal situations, like ammonia doesn't fly out of thin air. You're not going to find ammonia in a pond, in a pool somewhere. Nature does not allow ammonia to exist. Ammonia has to be made in a vacuum. Nature doesn't really have a vacuum. Nowhere in nature is there a vacuum. You have high pressure, you know, a volcano, high pressure, geyser, high pressure. Nowhere is there a vacuum in nature. But yet we can make ammonia because you have to have a vacuum environment in order to create the ammonia. Then it will condense, and now you have it in a liquid form. And once it's trapped in the liquid form, now you have it. And then you can then administer it into like normal 1 atmosphere pressure, what we're at right now, and it will exist because it doesn't have enough energy to break into its gas again, because now it's condensed into a liquid. But nature doesn't, you're not going to find a pool of ammonia. You're not going to find a frog that lives in ammonia, because ammonia doesn't exist in nature. We made ammonia. You know, So it could be something like that. It could be something like ammonia, the same way that we made ammonia. This structure could be making another gas. Could be even making ammonia for all I know. That would be funny. But because ammonia is hydrogen and nitrogen. 3 nitrogens and a hydrogen. That's all it is. It's nothing special. It's not like some Monsanto funky thing or Soylent Green or, Agent Orange, where it's like 12 chemicals mixed together, or was that other one, that the one that they use for fertilizer all the time, glyphosate. Okay, that is difficult to manufacture. But ammonia is actually fairly easy to manufacture given the correct environmental state, which nature does not provide. So the structure is creating something. I'm not sure what until I actually get it to play. And once I get it to play, or I get a physicist, somebody who understands what happens, I get some bright people, Chris Monk that used to be on here once in a while, he would probably be able to figure it out because he used to play with those type of chemicals, and actually dissect what has happened, actually talk about the structure, and actually, and I don't care if it's made from quarried rocks or poured rocks. I believe it's made from poured rocks, but I care about the construction, the structure, and the environment within. The creation is a rabbit hole I cannot really prove, even though other people have done scientific experiments and kind of already shown that the structure is poured. Many of the, I'm not saying all the rocks, there are probably half a dozen, maybe some of the ones in the internal bits that are actual real rock that may have been chiseled, that may have been carved out. I know there is machining. Chris Dunn has proven that there's machining. There's a couple of other guys that have pictures. Brian himself has plenty of photo evidence of machining of the rocks. So I don't mind that. I do believe the rocks were fabricated and then machined, just like if you were making a granite tabletop. If you could actually pour something that looks just like granite and then cut it, it's probably going to be less expensive than actually going and finding a granite rock and having it cut. Could be wrong, but they could also make the granite tabletop to whatever color they wanted and the how strong you want it if it's a fabricated rock. And there are plenty of people that in their houses and on their walls have fabricated rocks that, unless you really, really know what to look for, you would never know that they were fake rocks. They even have, nowadays we have photo finish rocks that, that's a whole nother story. But even then, you chisel into a little bit, you could tell they're fake. But
it's hard to believe that in one sense you say, well, you can't say it was like it was today then. This was different way, different things they were using. But in a sense, they were managing to do things we can't even create today. So what was it like then?
Yet, I'll say yet, because like I pointed out, 1,000 years ago, we didn't have cement. 1,000 years ago, we didn't have fabricated rocks, composite rocks. Nowadays, there are places, there's a place in France, the Polymer Institute, that creates many different rocks for tabletops. They can make a granite tabletop that you would never know wasn't granite. They can make a flagstone tabletop that you would never know wasn't flagstone. That's because they're duplicating what is done in nature on a industrial format. They're not like throwing stuff in the middle of the ground and running lava over the top of it and stamping on it for 10,000 years. They're doing it in a factory, but the output is almost identical unless you really know what to look for. It's identical to rock. And
so why can't we find those bits of it which would then prove for sure? Like, why aren't there any workshops or anything left to prove that they did this?
Well, it could be, and this is speculation, just like how there are giants in the Smithsonian in my national history. museum. They don't teach it, they don't talk about it, and they intentionally hide it. The Baghdad Battery used to be in a museum. It used to be a vase. And then as soon as somebody pointed out that, hey, that's a battery, that's no more different than, I don't have a battery around me, no more different than a dry cell battery. Actually, it was a liquid cell battery, so it's a car battery type setup. But no different than that, that they said, oh, let's put that in the basement. Out of sight, out of mind. So there may be evidence of machining. There may be the tools that they use to drill the holes. They may exist. But unless you work in the Vatican Library, unless you work in, the National Archives, unless you know whose hand to shake and who's, who to buy the right limousine and give the second vacation home to, you're not going to gain access to the proof that you need. Unless you happen to be Brian Forrester and you happen to stumble across it and somebody actually has it sitting in their backyard and doesn't know what it is, and you could sit there and say, hey, there's a lathe turn here and there's some gearing there, and look at the Antikythera device. They didn't know what that was for a really long time. Unfortunately, that one is so publicized they can't hide it. And they come up with excuses of its existence, but it exists. And it did, you know what, I point out to everyone I show it to after they really look at it, I'm like, it proves that we're on a flat earth. It itself is evidence that 1,000+ years ago, the stars were in the same exact spots, operating the same exact way, with the same exact schedule of the what do you call them, the eclipses and stuff. And none of that would be occurring if we were constantly flying through the universe and every couple of months staring at a different spot in the sky, if we were really rotating in circles, because we wouldn't be staring at the same sky constantly. We wouldn't be staring at the same sky every night. It would be a different sky, 360th of a degree off every day forever. And that's not the case. So, but all these,
I think really what would have happened a long time ago is that first of all we'd have felt sick, and then we would have exploded or been sucked off somewhere, because going so fast through the thing, we'd never be able to stay here. Going Mach 80. We're going Mach 80.
Okay.
That's how fast we're supposed to be going. But anyway, Angel, we've been going an hour and a half now.
Okay, we can wrap it up.
Is there any more you want to say on the Nazca lines bit? Because that's what I put on the title of this hangout.
I beg anyone to sit there and go and look at it and not agree. Look at the video I suggested, blueprint.giza.ws. I think it's like a 30-minute video that just will open the door. There's half a dozen more videos on top of that. And it's just, if the more people that look at it and trace it out, it's just, I'm looking for somebody who finds out, oh, over here in this one village is actually the blueprint area that you're looking for the antechamber area, or something like that. Somebody's going to find it. The blueprint is under somebody's house or in somebody's backyard, or unfortunately somebody could have moved all the rocks to make room for a field where they grew hay or something, for all I know, which will be disappointing, but it's there, and it's huge, and it exists, and it's hard to dismiss unless you don't want to believe it, in which case there are a bunch of runway lines, like they say. The runway lines that happen to draw the Great Giza Pyramid plateau. Not just the one pyramid, but all of them, even the supporting pyramids. They're all there.
And you will keep researching?
Well, until I get every last line of the blueprint, and then Like I said, it's a long-term project. Got to get all those lines, got to pump them into a CAD, eventually want to print them out on some sort of 3D printer type device. Be nice to print it out on like a tabletop model, something of that nature. I mean, as technology becomes more and more, the ability to do it will become more and more in my grasp. A 3D printer didn't exist like 5-10 years ago. Didn't exist 5 years ago. A 3D printer, $200 down at your local store. I can go to some places where for like 10-15 bucks, they'll print off this stuff if I bring them the artwork, the CAD drawing. So the ability to do what I want to do is becoming more and more tangible. It didn't exist 5 years ago. The ability to look at the Nazca lines on on Google Maps didn't exist a decade ago. So all these things are becoming more and more tangible, and it will happen. Unless I keel over and no one follows in my footsteps, it will happen because I'm going to follow it through until it happens. And it's going to be difficult when I put the plans up on a website and anyone can download them and anyone can print it out. And I think it would be great, just like in high school where somebody makes a Lord Kelvin drip generator or a Windhurst generator or a Van de Graaff generator and has it as their science project. If somebody actually has a Great Giza Pyramid complex model and actually demonstrates it as a high school science project, they don't even have to call it the Giza Pyramid project. They just say, hey, look, I made this really cool thing and look what it does. And people go like, wow, that's really cool. It actually does something. All right, you won first place. Where'd you get the idea? Oh, over there in Giza. Big rock drawings, big rock sculpture. And they'll be like, oh my God, that really is the same.
Can I ask you something, Angel? Do you think that there's even more of it? But like, in trees and things like that are growing all over it, and you've got grass and fields and people have sort of like ploughed it and all that. Do you think that there's more of it all over where we live, but we've just lost a lot of it? Or do you think that's just it there?
I haven't yet found it to be, but that big wall that Artis used to point us at, the one that stretches across Europe, it wouldn't surprise me if somehow that is part of some drawing that is huge, that could be something. It could be relevant more than just some huge wall. But I haven't followed that and looked for any adjoining walls or anything of that nature. But it wouldn't surprise me at this point. Now that I know that they were using the surface of the Earth as a big blueprint, it would not surprise me.
My daughter's just coming back. She's not going to be too noisy. I think she's with a friend. Yeah, that's brilliant. Thank you. Very interesting. I really hope that you do manage to do this. But Patricia Astral, are you there? Patricia Astral. Patricia Astral.
I'm here.
Hello, darling. Did you enjoy that hangout?
I did, yeah. I wanted just to quickly ask a question. Why were they built like a pyramid?
Well, if it actually performs a function, that would be one thing. Well, it does perform some functions. From altitude, it tells you where physically it is using a coordinate system, which is just like the ones we use, the longitude and latitude that we use, only the Great Giza Pyramid is actually the prime meridian. Only if you wish to believe that, and there's another set of videos which you're welcome to look at, thecode.giza.ws. It was made by a guy named Carl Monk, who I believe is still alive, but may not be because I have tried emailing him and he doesn't answer back. Then again, he may be so tired of people who ask him about little green aliens and stuff, because he says, oh, is this, I actually have real questions for him, but I think he's just done being bothered by the general public. But either case, he has pointed out how several of the large monolithic structures on the surface of the Earth are what I'll refer to as waypoints. From altitude, you can tell where you are if you know how to read them, and they're consistent on how you read them. Just like if I showed people Roman numerals and you say, oh, an X isn't really 10 and a V isn't really 5 and an M isn't really 100 or no, a C is 100 and M
there's
is 50.
something else as well. Just sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but there's things called star forts, and they're really old.
Those the things where you sit in the middle and there's a hole and it looks at a particular star on a particular day?
No. They're like structures. They're like they can have water in them, and they're just called star forts. Look them up. I mean, they're really ancient. They don't even know how old they are, but they're not really forts. They're not military things. People lived in them. They're like symbols, but they're built all in stone and brick and not brick, stone. Oh my goodness. Just look up star forts. They're really interesting because they're all in places like from the air. What would that look like?
Okay. I mean,
they're all like symbols.
Look into that, but many of the larger structures were designed to be read from altitude, like markings on a map, so you could tell where you were. And there's not just like how a buoy in the water says, this is buoy number 417. It was like if on the side of the buoy, it gave you the GPS coordinates, because, then you don't have to refer back to a map. You look at it, it tells you its GPS coordinates, end of story. And many of the monolithic structures are designed that way. And unfortunately, and I say that because I use it as a reference, Stonehenge fits that model, which makes me think the Druids that designed it knew not that knowledge and built it to fit that mold. Just like if and when I have enough time and I find like a field somewhere, if I was to build a monolithic structure, I would build it again to fit that mold under the same exact pattern of how to do it. And as long as something is consistent, like Roman numerals, if it's consistent, then it's a language, because it's a form of communication. They were consistent on these structures. Triangles mean one thing, circle means another thing, square means another thing. It's all mathematics. Luckily, GPS coordinates are all mathematics.
Again, don't you think it's amazing that they did all this in the first place? I do.
And it also shows that they had a large knowledge that we say was only developed in the 1950s when we put the satellites up there. I say we, us US guys did it. You guys over in the UK, even though you're at the prime meridian, you had nothing to do with the system, supposedly. But that's there's so many things that we were told that it doesn't feel right because the stories don't fit. The more you know, the more you can tell you've been lied to. Just like Santa Claus. Eventually you know that, hey, even though I thought Santa Claus came on Christmas every day, I now know it was my parents who dropped the gifts off. And you can then look back and say, oh, that's why Dad would go out to the garage so late at night after we went to sleep and was banging away out there. And that's why Mom wouldn't let me in the closet where she said she had all the stinky clothes. That's where they were hiding the Christmas gifts. You can look back on it, but at the time, you believe the story you were told. And you don't want to believe you were lied to. That's why I said something has to crack the shell. Something has to let you know you've been lied to, that you're willing to research it. You're willing to expand.
Yeah, always remaining open to everything because you think what you think you didn't know. Patricia, is there anything else you'd like to say? Is Astral there? Maybe Astral's fallen asleep because he's working and tired. Astral, are you there? Flat Earth calling Astral. Flat Earth calling Patricia.
Yeah, I'm here. It makes a change, doesn't it? That I'm actually.
Yeah, you're quite often there at the end.
I know.
Anyway, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat. It's been a while, hasn't it? Because you've moved and yeah, missed our
Well, I'm getting
angel.
more set now.
Pardon?
I'm getting more set where this can be a more of a common day thing.
Cool. And ending on a note again, I'll just put that link out about Josh Walker, Josh Erber, and there you can find out a bit more about him on that link. And there is a fund there for him if people want to donate to him. And we just, Sun and Moon, wish him well and speedy recovery. Thank you very much, Angel. Amazing as ever. And we probably could have talked for another 6 hours about it. 20 hours. Forever. So anyway, yeah. Anyway, it's been great that you've been back because we have missed you. But anyway, thank you so much to the chat room. Thank you to Astral Patricia and Angel. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow we've got Paul on the plane and we've got Alex, conspiracy music guru. So woohoo. So see you tomorrow.
I like the fact that he's got